Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is a podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and bringing you one more author interview today. Today I am speaking with author Greg Levin about his book, In Wolves' Clothing. It was a lot of fun to sit down and talk with Greg. He is very funny, but his book is actually about a very serious topic. So I'm going to give you the description of the book before I start kind of fumbling my way through trying to describe it. I'm just going to give you the description as I normally do. This is the description from Amazon that says, on his best days, Zero Slade is the worst man you can imagine. He has to be. It's the only way to save the lost girls. During his 7 years on a team fighting sex trafficking, Zero's become quite good at schmoozing with pimps, getting handcuffed by cops, and pretending not to care about the young girls he liberates. But the dangerous sting operations are starting to take a toll on his marriage and sanity. His affinity for prescription painkillers isn't exactly helping matters. When the youngest girl the team has ever rescued gets abducted from a safe house in Cambodia, Zero decides to risk everything to find her. His only shot is to go rogue and sink deeper into the bowels of the trafficking world than he's ever sunk. It's the biggest mission of his life. Trouble is, it's almost certain death. So, you don't usually expect a book about someone who fights sex trafficking to be a comedy. And it doesn't, as we talk about in the interview, it does not make light of this topic. It certainly does not at all. But I enjoyed this book so much more than I expected to. It is so well written and so human in the way it portrays Zero. It's told from Zero's point of view. And it really is funny. I mean, Zero is sarcastic and he has a dark sense of humor. He has to in order to get through what he has to get through in life. And in case you're worried, the book does talk about a very dark and terrible subject, but it's not graphic. There are a few things that are mentioned that are, of course, not pleasant, but there's nothing graphic about it. It's not something that's going to necessarily give you nightmares or make you just horrified as to what you've read. It touches on the subjects that it needs to touch on, and it does so in ways that are, of course, respectful and important to the book. There's nothing gratuitous and there's nothing graphic. So I would like Greg to talk more about that because he's able to describe it so much more than I can. I have spent the last week as I have read this book and talked to Greg just going through how to figure out how to tell you how much I enjoyed this book. That is such an odd topic to tell you how much I enjoyed. So I'm going to turn to that interview with author Greg Levin, and he's going to tell you more about this book, In Wolves' Clothing. Hi, Greg. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So we are here to talk about your new novel, In Wolves' Clothing. But before we do that, I would love for my listeners to get to know you a little bit. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your life, whatever you're comfortable sharing, that would be great.
Sure. Oh, wow. So I was born. No, just kidding.
I love it. In a little log cabin.
I am obviously I write novels. I've been writing novels for about, I don't know, probably started my first one in early 2000. Didn't get my first one published till 2011. And I write dark comedies or transgressive fiction, which is, kind of people who are breaking rules, but you're rooting for them kind of stuff, Breaking Bad, Dexter, that kind of thing. I'm from the East Coast. I'm born in New York. My whole family's from New York, but my parents moved to Pennsylvania when I was a kid, and somehow I live in Texas now, but I lived in Spain, I lived in New Orleans, so when people ask me where I'm from, I really don't even know. I just freeze. I don't know what to say. So I want me to say the East Coast of the U.S. And I'm pretty fortunate. I get to work from home, so I'm not wearing anything right now. And the neighbor doesn't seem to like it because my window faces theirs. But what else? What do you want to know? I mean, you can't ask a writer. You can't ask someone who basically just wants attention. That's what writers want. To just go on about themselves.
No, that's great. I mean, just a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, and you live in Austin. You're married and do you have children?
I am married to a wonderful woman. It is my second marriage, and I think it's going to be one of my best. And
one of your best, I'm sure.
I have a child who lives with us. She's not a child anymore. She's 17, and she lives with myself and her stepmom and her mother. She still has a good relationship with her mother, who lives a couple hours away. So I live in Austin, Texas. I didn't say that before. I mean, I did, but and her mother lives in Houston. So it's she's still, there's no drama there. And we separated when my daughter was 18 months old. So she doesn't even know. That's basically how she's grown up, back and forth.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. We can turn to the book now, which is called In Wolves' Clothing. Could you give us a little bit of an overview just on the general storyline?
So it is about a guy. Well, it's about a team, really, but it's told in first person present through the main character, whose name is Zero Slade. It's about a guy who travels the globe pretending to be a sex tourist to help rescue victims of child sex trafficking. And I know I started this off when you asked me about myself, that I write dark comedies, and it's not obviously the funniest topic that there is, but the novel it never makes light of the horrible problem of sex trafficking, which is just horrendous. But there's a lot of humor in the book just because of the kind of job this guy has and the things, how he copes with doing what he does. So he's one of these, people you're rooting for, but you're like, how does he do what he does? And let me elaborate a little bit. So there are people who do this. I base my character off of an organization that actually has these people who travel around, basically pretending to be pedophiles, and they work with the local police in these different countries and cities, and they set up sting operations, and they never actually, obviously, do anything with these children. It's all set up as a party. They're just like, hey, we're me and my buddies, we're rich businessmen from America. We're having this big party. Be here. We can get girls, and they get all these girls to these mansions that they rent to kind of make it look even more like they're these rich guys. And that's when the cops bust in and grab the girls. But it's a hell of a job. I found out about it. This is the first book I've ever written. It's my fourth novel. It's the first one that I got the idea based on something that actually happened. I heard about in real life. My wife went on a humanitarian mission to Cambodia to help build an art center for a home where children, young girls who were rescued from sex trafficking. It's where they live. I think it was in Cambodia. I forgot the name of Siem Reap. I should pronounce it correctly. That's the area where these girls, this home or this kind of campus of rescued child, I don't like to say sex workers because it sounds like they're prostitutes,
right?
Victims of sex trafficking. And she went on this thing. Men aren't even allowed on the grounds of this place. She went with some friends and basically built this art center where these girls can help. They can deal with all that they did by creating art and painting and all that sort of thing. And she came home and told me about I knew why she went. I asked her how it was and everything. She was telling me all about it. We were breaking down in tears because it's beautiful, touching stories. And I just asked, one thing I haven't asked you is, this is me talking to my wife, is how did the girls get there? I mean, you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old girl, you don't just, it's kind of hard to just run away from a pimp who has you, drugged up in a brothel. I mean, it's horrible stuff. And she said, well, and that's what she told me about this. These people go in and they pretend to be. So that's where I got the idea from. And she told me, I was like, boom. I mean, I got goosebumps. I was like, I have my next novel. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah. I'm on the shelf. I was working on just something else, very much just a straight up dark comedy, the kind of stuff I usually do. And I was like, I saw like the whole story. Like I saw the character and just knew the kind of how messed up he'd be because of what he's seen, but also how noble he'd be by, being driven by what he's trying to do. And that's how it started. And it took me a while to write it, but I got it done. And now it's out.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story. Thank you for sharing it. The book is... I've been kind of struggling with how to talk about the book because it's a really enjoyable read, and yet it's about, in part, this very horrible, very real problem in the world. So at the heart of it, it is about this man who works to get young girls out of this horrible human trafficking, sex trade situation they're in, and yet the book is humorous, and it never shies away from those topics. It addresses them head on, but it doesn't ever feel just completely overwhelming. So you found a balance in there. Can you talk a little bit about how you decided to write that, in that balance and figure out what to share in terms of the details of Zero's work, but also how to make it more approachable?
Yeah, I appreciate the question because that was the challenge. And but like I said, I knew I had to write the story. I couldn't not write it. I certainly didn't tackle this topic thinking, oh, well, there'll be a million people are going to run out and buy this book. But it's the way you asked the question was funny because or when you describe the book, it really encapsulates all the reviews I'm getting, which I'm thrilled with. It's getting very positive reviews, like on Amazon. But I'll read them and I'm like, I have to throw that in there. Like it's always like, this is incredible. This is fascinating. I love this book. 5 stars, 4 stars. It's a horrendous topic. It's really disturbing. I'm like, oh man, you just leave that part out. But I guess you don't write a book about this topic.
Right.
Not mention that, but I do want to point out that I don't go into deep. There's not graphic detail. There's no, yes, Zero does for a little to grab a little bit of attention when people when he comes back to America in the book, and he hears people complain about the littlest things, the first world problems kind of stuff. He'll be like, you're in his head, and he's like, well, maybe I'll tell him about the little, the 8-year-old girl in Thailand who this and this happened to, and that happened to, and there's a little bit of some graphic, quick things like that. But, it just kind of wakes you up, like, wow, I can't believe those things happen. But you're not in the scene. You're not watching, 5-year-old girls getting raped and things like that. I don't enjoy writing like that. I'm not a horror writer. I'm not out to just totally push buttons. I have a daughter myself, so I had to write a book in a way which didn't make me, throw up and while I was writing it. But I also did, I was fortunate enough to get the workshop to workshop part of this novel with Chuck Palahniuk. I got invited to. He did a workshop called the Writing Wrong Workshop. Chuck Palahniuk's one of my favorite writers. He's, for those who don't know, I'm sure most listeners probably already know who Chuck Palahniuk is, but he wrote Fight Club and Survivor and Visible Monsters and lots of fantastic books. And so I got to spend 10 Mondays out in Portland reading things to the group, and Chuck would say, don't hold back. Because I am a dark comedian, dark humor writer primarily, but I also love writing, kind of crime noir kind of stuff. They're like, don't be too clever, but also you're going to cut the tension. This topic deserves some serious writing. So it was a lot of fun. My previous books were they're still too dark and have some serious topics involved, but they weren't so controversial. I could kind of really show have fun with it. And this book I had to get dark.
Excuse me while I jump in here. We do have to take our first break of the podcast. But as you can see, Greg is so much better at describing the process of writing this book and the dark humor involved and how we do touch on a very serious subject, but use that dark humor in order to both make it more approachable and humanize the main character and the story itself. So I really appreciate how he described that. When we come back, he's going to be talking more about that dark humor, more about the topic of the book, and then we're going to just talk about so many more things that you must come back after the break. Please do. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and we will be right back.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. Jordan and Keith is Entertainment Tonight meets Access Hollywood.
I'm Jordan. The guy laughing, that's Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith.
An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I am speaking with author Greg Levin about his book In Wolf's Clothing. If you remember, before the break, he was talking about the serious nature of the topic and how he wrote that as a dark comedy, which is where we jump right back into that interview.
That's just it. Just doing the research and finding out what really went on. It's impossible to write a straight comedy about something like this. So, I don't know why you ever would want to, but I also can't. But I also can't just write. I just don't have it in me to write the hardcore, serious, like Cormac McCarthy. You want to blow your brains out, even though it's the best book you've ever read, like The Road kind of thing. I love writers like that. I love reading writers like that. I just can't write that way. I'm a little too snarky. And when I interviewed the guy who did this for a living, the guy my character is based off of. To me, the real litmus test was I sent him some stuff early on. He's like, I love this. And I was like, well, yeah, because it's about kind of what you do. I'm like, and in my head, I'm thinking, and also you're not a writer. So you don't necessarily know this is good writing. But no, what he meant was the tone. He said, Greg, that's how we survived.
Yeah.
We joked amongst each other. You don't joke about the girls. You don't joke about, you're just making fun of yourself. You're making fun of how just absurd these missions are, that this problem exists. He's like, so half the time we're drinking or doing drugs, and a lot of this, he says there's a fair amount of addiction. There's some people get real messed up. He's talking about former Navy SEALs, the guys who get into this stuff, or former Black Ops, Navy SEALs, CIA, NSA, pretty badass guys. And that was a little concern I had in the book too. I didn't want it to be like, America, Team America going in and saving the world, and a bunch of guys going in and saving the world, like, these poor little girls, the princesses waiting to be saved by the tough men. I want to make sure all females listening, that first of all, the head of the organization in the book, Zero's boss, and all the other guys who do this, their boss is a woman. There's lots of power. Zero's wife doesn't take any of his crap. She's a very strong female character, and so it's tough you can't really have a female character doing the kind of work these guys do. Aren't many females who are traveling around looking for little girls. That have been trafficked, that to get pleasure from. So So I'm not sure if I even answered the question, but I just want people to know that it's a dark, kind of maybe more on the crime fiction side of things, with a lot of humor and humanity. Not just humor like, I can't believe you just made fun of it. Not once are these little girls being made fun. I mean, I get choked up just when I talk about this book, and I think, so I go back to the research I was doing and like stuff I learned and the people that my little girls, my wife actually met when she went there, and it's tough, but I'm just thrilled with the reception so far. I've gotten no one saying hasn't pissed me. Maybe I could use a little bit of this book really pissed me off kind of publicity. I can help the book, but it hasn't come yet. It's been mostly wow. This is hardcore. It's a tough topic, but handled well. So I'm proud of that. But I'm ready to write something not quite so heavy for my next.
I can imagine.
My next book.
So, piggybacking off of what you just said about maybe there could be some "this really pissed me off" reactions, you mentioned in one of your emails to me that January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and that you are doing some promotion around that. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I do want to talk about it. Thank you for bringing it up. I want to be careful the way I talk about it because I don't want people to think that I'm looking to promote myself. Use Human Trafficking Awareness Month to promote my book.
Right.
I guess I kind of am, but that's why I chose. That's why I'm choosing to do 100%. I chose to give 100% of sales. So basically, any copy, any of the proceeds from any of the ebook or the paperback copy of In Wolf's Clothing, all the proceeds from the month that I make in the month of January, that started January 1st, obviously, up until midnight on the 31st. Maybe I'll go a couple of days into February, just to give people extra time. All that money is going towards I'm donating towards an organization called Operation Underground Railroad. It'd be great. I don't know how your podcast works. If you can, when you put it up, if you can add links and stuff beneath it, but it'd be great to link to their websites, people to find out what they do. They basically, that's who the guy used to work with. He's not really working with. He was a volunteer. These guys volunteer. They really didn't get paid. In my book, it's kind of their job, but in real life, they're volunteers. They just do this because they want to help this problem.
Oh, wow.
So that's actually, that's the organization that I don't mention in the book. It is fiction. Operation Underground Railroad will not claim that all of this is completely true. The donation part is,
right.
But the book, it's fiction. And I told them that when I approached them to say, hey, I'd love to do something, with for this month to get me to get. I said, I'm not James Patterson. I'm not J.K. Rowling. You're not going to be getting a check for $10,000. I don't make $10,000 a month on my books. Maybe one day. But a nice full chunk of change, hopefully, especially since the book was still relatively new. It just came out in October. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. We'll take your money, and thank you. So I would just like people to, if they are interested in the book, or even just interested in helping an organization that helps victims of child sex trafficking, pick up a copy. And I promise you that all that money that will go to OUR, and that's not an organization I want to mess with. I don't want to promise an organization that I'm going to give them money, not give them money when that organization is filled with the kind of,
right.
CIA, Black Ops, Navy SEAL kind of guys who could whose arms are bigger than my whole family.
Yeah, don't tick off those guys. They will come to your house. Sounds great. All the proceeds from your books, the book sale in January, will go to Operation Underground Railroad. So I will include that information in the notes on the episode. Let's talk a little bit more about your main character, Zero. He's human. I mean, he does really great work, but he's kind of messed up in real life, which is understandable given the line of work that he's in. You don't ever mention his real name. At one point he says Zero is his real name. I'm going to guess it's not, but do you want to talk about why his name is Zero?
Oh, goodness. So funny. So it is his name, and I was working on a book. I was going to be writing a book about a guy who I will never go back to this book. I'm not a sci-fi writer. All respect to sci-fi writers, but it was never kind of dark dystopian book about a guy who basically people start going to the moon, just starts to be inhabited, but they testing it out the way basically England used to send criminals to Australia. The moon is basically going to be a place where you keep prisons to help with the prison population. And because it's going to be set in the future, that character's name is going to be Zero. Never got off the ground, but I just love the name Zero. I don't know why, I just love it. The only person I know named Zero is Zero Mostel, the actor. It's not really a believable name, but I couldn't. It's like, I know some people don't like when writers take their characters too seriously, but it's true. When writers said something like the character wouldn't let me do this, or the character wanted to go in this direction, I had to follow them. That's what happened. My wife's like, I don't like the name. Change the name. And I was like, and I always do what my wife says, but not in this case. and then when I went to do the first reading, after I got accepted to Chuck's workshop, Chuck Palahniuk said, I told him about the name. I was like, what about the name? He's like, oh no, you got to keep the name. So he's like, you got to keep the name, because he really likes, something that's memorable. There's enough, Brian's and Mark's and Zach's and Jack's and John's in books. So that's his real name, and it's a legitimate question, because some people think maybe it's like his agent name, like his special agent, but no, that's his name.
So his mama named him Zero. Is that what you're saying?
His mother named him Zero, and I don't do I'm not big on info dumps and doing unnecessary backstory in books. I learned that the hard way. I learned that by doing it wrong in the first book. But it's a very common mistake for first time or even second or third time novelists. Too much backstory. I just think it's more interesting. This story is so intriguing. I mean, like, my writing is just the fact that it happens in the real world. Like, the story's so intriguing. Who cares? Who cares how? It's just interesting. Figure it out for yourself why his mom named him.
That's right.
That's right. My wife's like, well, his brother, because he has a deceased brother. I'm not giving any spoiler alerts. His brother is dead from the beginning of the book.
Right.
He has conversations with him. His name's Hank. So he's like, hey, his brother's name's Hank, and I think his name's Hank. I can't look at my own book. His name's Hank, and his name's Zero. Really? So
I just choose to believe that the epidural hadn't worn off, or she she was just a little bit drugged up.
Oh, I'm totally gonna. Yeah, in fact, I'll write the prequel. And that's gonna be I don't know. I've got zero tolerance for any more pain. I can't handle it. Just get the freaking baby out of my body. And it just stuck. Okay, here it is.
That's nice. He jokes occasionally that his name is Bob, but that's just.
Well, that's actually, that's not really so much a joke. That's more him not wanting to, like when he goes to the AA meeting.
Right.
So first of all, thank you for reading the book. I have interviews oftentimes with people who haven't read the book, which is fine. I realize, you got lots of suggestions. You can't read every single book before all the time, but it's kind of like his way of, like, when he goes to AA, not really, it's finally coming to grips that he's got a narcotics problem and an alcohol problem, but not using his real name. That's the lie. That's how he's protecting himself, by not using his real name. So at least he's coming clean about his demons, but he also uses it. He goes to visit the girls, and that's more for obvious reasons, because you don't want your real name being used, when you're out in the field.
Right.
Once again, rudely interrupting the interview to take the second break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be talking more about why Greg writes dark humor and why he chooses the topics that he does. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and we will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I am speaking with author Greg Levin about his book In Wolves' Clothing, and I am about to ask a question that I can't figure out how to ask, and I just am upfront with that, and it comes out extremely untactfully. So just warning you that there is social awkwardness and untactfulness ahead. So you have mentioned your other novels. This is, what did you say this is your fifth? Did I make that up? In Wolves' Clothing is my fourth. Fourth, okay.
My third good one.
Okay. So you mentioned more than once that you tend to write more on the dark comedy side of things, and this definitely falls into that. See, I told you last night that I didn't know how to phrase this question, and I still don't know how to phrase this question. Just why? What draws you? What draws you to that particular way of writing in terms of dark comedy?
It's just well, first of all, we humans are. Life is a dark comedy. We're the only beings, as far as we know, that are completely conscious of the fact that we are definitely going to die. That's hilarious, right there. And yet we still shave, and we still we bathe, and we go to work, and we try to do things like aren't easy, instead of just sitting around drinking and doing drugs all the time. I'm kind of a fan of a good balance between all those things, but it's just how I've always been. I think I was the youngest I'm the youngest of three boys, and my brothers kicked my ass, so I had to kind of learn to be, kind of smart and funny. That's how I protected myself a little bit. Like if I could make them laugh, maybe they won't hit me. Kind of. First of all, I was not really not an abused kid or anything like that, but it's what you do when you're young and you're smaller than people you're hanging out with, is you gotta try to be funny. So that. The humor part, that's where the humor part comes from. The dark part, I don't know. It's, again, I think I started reading Woody Allen very young, and also, Nietzsche and Kierkegaard. So,
okay.
Dark philosophy and comedy, and, even though I'm not sure if I mentioned that I'm Jewish by blood, I don't really practice, but I still have that. I think just being Jewish and it's just in you. It's in you, like the years of persecution and all that stuff. That it's like, well, we can bitch about it, or we can kind of make jokes about, the Holocaust. So right. I think that there's some of the best comedians, some of the funniest people I know just bring me to tears, or but also touch on very human topics, or Jewish people. I guess I kind of remind you of the Seinfeld episode now. Oh, he's just claiming to be Jewish for the jokes. But yeah, so why do I write that way? You can be funny, but still not. I know guys who are a lot funnier than I am who still write really gripping, hard crime books without much humor in them. I think it's just funny novels about vampires and zombies and wizards and people being in love, romantic. I don't want to compete with them. They're hard to compete with. I want to get better rankings on Amazon, and dark comedy is an easier category to hit number one
in. Fair enough. There. Okay.
Why should I write fantasy? I can't compete with George R.R. Martin. So I'll write dark comedy.
Okay. Yeah, there was no judgment in the question. It was just I couldn't figure out how to phrase it. So.
I didn't feel judgment.
Good question. Somebody who really wishes that there was a sarcasm font in the world appreciates another person who speaks in snark. So.
Did you say sarcasm font?
Yes, I really want there to be a font
I love it.
you can write in so people know you're being sarcastic.
I hate emojis. I hate emojis. I hate them. I don't want it to wink. I want you to get that I'm being. I probably wouldn't use the font either. I just okay, it's not smart if I know that I'm just totally effing around right now, then screw you. But that is funny. A sarcasm font. And so, I just want to add too that I also feel that humor is a great way. I said it once in some interview recently. I don't use it to offend. I use it to defend. I think that I truly feel that humor is a great weapon. It's, you know, and it's a weapon that instead of destroying, you know, it kind of keeps us from being destroyed. I think it was Nietzsche. I think I bring up Nietzsche twice in the interview. Like I'm all smart.
You're just name dropping.
One of my favorite quotes is, and I probably mispronounced it, I think it's Nietzsche, but is we have art, and Nietzsche didn't speak that much English, so this is translated. But we have art in order not to die of the truth. I kind of feel the same way. I think humor kind of serves the same purpose. In fact, I think when humor is really deftly wielded, when it's like well handled, I think it is. I think it's a powerful art. I think it's art.
Okay, thank you. So let's transition a little bit. Still talking about your writing. You said that you've been writing for a while. Is it something that you've always wanted to do, or did you come to it kind of later in life? How did that start for you?
Well, you've probably already divined that I talk a lot, and you will, you know, I go on, and it's like a nervous energy I have. There's only a certain amount of words that friends and family members will listen to, and so I kind of learned early on, like, okay, no one's listening anymore. So I got to find a place for my words. And I say it jokingly, but it's kind of, it's true. I mean, I get tired of myself. Like, my wife and I will leave a party, and I'll be like, oh my God, why can't you shut up? So when I write, not only people can't shut me up, they can stop reading. It gives me time to think about what I'm going to say. I mean, I actually am a fan of minimalist style. Like, if you read, especially in minimalist clothing, it's pretty pared down. I'm not flowery and rambling on. It's the sentences are there, the sentences that need to be there, and it's also that Chuck drilled into me, and other writing teachers have drilled into me, and so it just gives you a chance to. I mean, I love telling stories, you know, and I want to tell stories that people will listen to, and it's just a way for me to control. It's like poetry, kind of. It's condensed. It's like got lots of words coming out of me, lots of words in my brain. Blah 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 blah. Let's kind of parse them in. Let's gather the good ones up. Let's put them in a good order. Let's tell a cool story, and then maybe people will actually respect you. And so I do get nervous during podcast interviews, and when I'm on panels. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, he's hilarious," and other times you're like, "I'm not going to read this guy because Jesus, his word, he's just all over the place." But fortunately, my books aren't quite so all over the place.
Yeah. So what are you working on now? What's next? You said you didn't want to do something quite so heavy. So what are you working on now, if you don't mind talking about it?
No. So yeah, I'll never write I'll never write a comedy comedy.
Right.
Like, oh, this is just a laugh a minute. You know, I'm not,
right.
Stuff like that. But it's still going to be, and I believe like kind of the noir. This last book brought me closer to kind of the crime fiction. In fact, I'm starting to really, really read a lot more crime fiction. Without giving it away, first of all, it's going to be the first book that will have a female protagonist. I'm really excited to give that a shot. My wife's like, you don't know the first thing about women. What the hell are you doing? So don't have the biggest vote of confidence there, but she's also kind of thrilled about the story. So when I told her it, so it's going to be a female protagonist.
What about your daughter? Does she think you can write a female protagonist?
Yeah, she's excited about it too. Well, you know, I know what not to do. I've read enough about men writing women where you don't have to write. Just read this hilarious piece. It was written by a woman like, "Hey, men writing female characters, please stop talking about your boobs."
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's so funny. Like in the whole piece, I think it was a piece. I don't remember who wrote it, but Writer Unboxed, which is one of my favorite websites. Writer Unboxed. You writers out there listening, if you don't follow them on Twitter or get their emails, definitely. I've got no affiliation with them, and I've never even written for them. I just love their stuff. She was just making fun of like a guy will write something like, and then I ran into the trees, my breasts heaving. Like women don't actually, in life, women aren't actually thinking about what their body parts and genitals are doing. Like, they're not like...
Yeah, we're not constantly fascinated by them because, we own them, so...
And you own them, and it's just like it's just a body, but it's men just don't... And I saw some real... she uses a lot of exaggerated examples, which cracked me up, but there's I've been to use some real examples too. And it's like, oh my gosh, you should kind of cringe. Like, I don't think I've ever mentioned any of my people. I don't think I've ever mentioned any of my protagonists. I don't think I've mentioned their testicles ever. I don't think I've ever mentioned any, crotch sweat or like what's happening in their erogenous zone. I don't like a lot of sex scenes either, but unless there's a sex scene going on, there's just no need for that. So I'm not going to talk a lot about my character's body. And yes, I'm excited about. I'll give you a little teaser. It's basically, and it's actually almost two female protagonists because her mother is going to be a big character, a big role in the book as well. It's like a late 30s, early 40-year-old woman's the main character, and then her late 60s, early 70-year-old mother is another character. And I'll just put it like this: I'm fascinated at the idea of. Without giving you the storyline, I'm fascinated by the idea of people who would consider going to prison on purpose.
Okay.
It's not a common thing.
That is a teaser, yes.
Yeah. But I just think I kind of thought about this as a joke, but when you read about low security or minimum security federal kind of prisons, and if you're poor or you're elderly or you can't, you don't have good medical care in America, especially. There's an article out there where this is actually can actually be a better option. Now, typically, even in the low middle security minimum security prisons, if you're a man, this can still be a little rough. It's probably not you're probably not going to give up your freedom to go there, but whatever. It's some interesting stuff. So let's just say that it's going to be, that's kind of like the impetus for this story is what, I can't afford to take care of my mom anymore. What if I were to get her, what if we were to do something illegal, but just the right amount of legal, we're into this kind of place, and then things go horribly wrong from there.
Okay.
So it's going to be, fun. It was originally going to be a book about they actually do, getting into prison and seeing and like not wanting to get out. But I was like, nothing really happened there. I like the idea of trying to and failing, like trying to get in prison and failing, and then having things go quite awry.
Okay.
So that's my next book. I don't have a title. I guess I kind of do, but I have the characters' names. And I have the first pages written and an outline.
Sounds like a good start. Thank you for that. You've mentioned that you're reading more crime fiction. Do you have favorite authors and genres?
Yeah, well, when I say crime fiction, I don't read like straight up crime fiction, like the bestseller crime fiction. I write, so transgressive fiction is the word you'll see me on my Twitter feed a lot. I'm a huge, that's what, Chuck Palahniuk's books are, he's the master of it. Craig Clevenger, who wrote The Contortionist Handbook. I just love books where there are people who are like transgressing the law. They're breaking rules. But you're rooting for them all along anyway. Sometimes they're breaking rules, like major rules, like serial killing kind of stuff. But you understand their motive, and sometimes they don't have any killing instincts at all, but they're doing something quite illegal, quite risky, but with great intentions. So some of the writers who I mentioned. I really do love is who's probably the biggest name writer, like top best-selling kind of is Gillian Flynn. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't want to like her, so she's one of those best-selling New York Times. And then I read Sharper Objects and I read Gone Girl. I'm like, wow, or Sharp Objects. I mean, I can't remember now. She's a damn good writer. But some of the other authors I will name. Like Will Christopher Bear. A lot of these guys just like disappear. They wrote these brilliant books and then they disappeared or have had a tough time getting the book out. He wrote Kiss Me Judas. A lot of these books are written like the early 2000s. Stephen Graham Jones writes amazing stuff. Again, these Irvine Welsh, of course, Train Spotting, Filth. He wrote some big books. So they're not necessarily crime fiction where you have like detectives and or also just a straight up criminal, but you have people who are they're kind of pulpy, noir, gritty. Gritty is the word I really like. Gritty novels with humor as well. Dennis Johnson, he writes. We lost him this year, or actually technically 2017, so last year. He died. He wrote a group of short stories called Jesus' Son, which the title alone is amazing. I love him. He had a big influence on Chuck Palahniuk as well. So of course, when you have one of your favorite writers, you always read what your favorite writers were influenced by. And I realized I'm not naming enough female. I need to read more female writers. Amy Hempel, unbelievable. Certainly not crime, but just as far as just minimalist writing goes, it's one of the greatest writers there is. She wrote it's the most anthologized. She's one of the most anthologized writers ever, and some people never heard of her. Reasons to Live is a book I recommend everybody read if you just want to see what amazing writing in her short stories. She's incredible, and I just don't like to read her in public because I'm carrying around a book that says Reasons to Live. I'm afraid people are going to alert like a suicide. Right. Ask you how I'm doing. You okay? Do you need to talk?
Yeah.
So
can we call anyone for you?
I generally don't carry. I don't carry Reasons to Live around. I carry books around I carry like Being in Nothingness, like books like geniuses read. I carry around Infinite Jest, giant books that nobody ever can finish, even though they're brilliant, just so people think I'm smarter. And it's also a good workout because they're like 800 pages. But Infinite Jest, I mean, it's the book that everybody says they love
but they've never actually finished.
But never have read. Exactly.
Time for one final break before we come back for the conclusion of this interview with author Greg Levin. When we come back, he will be talking about an author giveaway, so you don't want to miss the details of that. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and we will be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA, from the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion to my interview with author Greg Levin.
So speaking of transgressive fiction, I can say that really. You mentioned in your email that you are currently hosting an autographed novels giveaway. Do you want to give us more information on that?
I would love to, yeah. It's going on right now. Talk about female writers. I can't believe I didn't even mention one of the books I'm giving away, one of the autographed books I'm giving away is by a fantastic female novelist, Monica Drake. She wrote Clown Girl.
I wondered about that, actually.
And she has a stud book out now, too. I believe it's out or it's coming out, but she's unbelievable. So basically, I think I sent you the link so you can put that out on the podcast, but if you go to my giveaway landing page of my website, you just have to enter your name and your email, and you will be entered into there'll be a randomly selected winner, and you will win a hardcover first edition autographed copy of Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. And these are all brand new condition. I don't want people thinking like, oh, we should get this guy's ratty old books that he had signed one day. These are all books that I actually, I'm fortunate enough to have them just enough of a connection with these writers where I can reach out to them and ask them for autographed copies. And they were all very, very kind, generous, and willing to participate. So hardcover copy of Fight Club signed by Chuck Palahniuk. There's going to be one winner. One winner's going to get all these books. I was going to split it up. I was like, nope, I want just one winner getting all these books. Craig Clevenger's The Contortionist Handbook. So another amazing book. So that it's called The Contortionist Handbook, and it's signed by Greg Clevenger. Monica Drake's Clown Girl, as I already mentioned. Now, the only hardcover book is Fight Club. The other ones are paperback, but they're really quality. They're like that good quality paperback.
Okay.
And no, they're not signed to me. Don't say to Greg. These are going to be like, they're signed with like funny inscriptions, whatever, and they're not going to be personalized to the winner. It would take too long to get to them, but
right.
They're not books that were written to me. And last but definitely not least is The Elephant Tree by R.D. Ronald. This guy flies under the radar. He was pretty big it's a great book. He also wrote a book called The Zombie Room, but I have a signed copy, or he has contributed a signed copy of The Elephant Tree. Great, and he's one of the biggest proponents of transgressive fiction. He's the one who's like refuses to write anything else and has a lot of respect for anybody who writes these kind of topics that aren't going to appeal to the masses, but they still want to write them anyway. And he's very supportive. He's been wonderful with just helping me with like promotion ideas and stuff. He's very, very generous. He lives in England, and has had a very interesting life in his own right. So I definitely don't want to leave him off. And I don't care if you haven't heard of him, read him.
Okay.
He's great. And some people will be like, of course I've heard of him, but if you haven't, he's definitely worth checking out.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it. So, sorry, if I give you more detail about the giveaway. It ends at 11:59 p.m. this coming Thursday, February 1st.
Okay.
So when the clock's that's Central Time, when the clock strikes midnight, which is technically February 2nd, it'll be over, and then most people are familiar with Rafflecopter. There'll be a randomly selected winner from all the people who enter, and I'll be sending out the books.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's the giveaway.
They can find it on your website. So go ahead and give us the website address, and also tell us where people can find you on social media.
Oh goodness, yeah. It's kind of like probably should have done a better job of giving a name. So I created a special landing page for this. So it's probably not really great. It's greglevin.com, and you got a /go and a /autograph -books-giveaway. But if you just go to my Twitter page, it's pinned to the top. So if you go to find me on Twitter, my Twitter is is at Greg Levin. Sorry, at Greg _Levin, all lowercase. The giveaway thing is pinned to the top there. Also, my Facebook author page. You just do Greg Levin author or Greg Levin author. Also on Instagram, you'll see. People will find it. I'm promoting the heck out of it. In fact, I feel kind of bad that I'm timing it this way because I don't want to eat into the promotion of my own book, which is the proceeds of which are going to the nonprofit organization Operation Underground Railroad.
Right.
But just the way things kind of happened, I kind of had to there's a reason why I kind of had to do this giveaway at this time. So something's happening in February that I need to get some hype going for.
So make sure you get Greg's book in wolf's clothing before the end of January, and then on February 1st, you can go sign up for the giveaway. Just make sure you don't get those dates confused.
No, up until February 1st, so they can sign up.
Yes, okay.
I just want to be sure they don't think the giveaway starts. It started.
Oh, right. Yeah.
2 days ago.
No, I'm saying if you want to buy his book and have the proceeds go to Operation Underground Railroad, make sure you do that by January 31st, and then you can sign up for the giveaway until February 1st. So you have an extra day for the giveaway.
Got it.
Yep. We're getting close to the time where we wrap things up, but before we do that, do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
Basically, tell anybody who's thinking about, people will ask me, I want to write a novel, what should I do? I'm like, well, that's kind of a broad question, but just do it. but be warned that it is a grind. The grind is often painful, and there's a lot of rejection, and it can be painful and miserable. But the good thing is that you can use that pain and that misery to write something that's worth a damn. I find that it's kind of hard to write really well unless you're miserable and in a lot of pain. So that's it. It works. It kind of works in your favor. It's painful and miserable, and then that'll actually help your writing. Try debut novels. Rarely succeed. So try to start off with your third or your fourth, which I know is absurd, but I like to be absurd. If you're an indie author, which a lot of people are these days, and there's some great indie authors, you can't skimp on cover design, editing, proofreading. You got to hire professionals for these things. You don't care how keen you think your eye is. And I get it. It takes money. It's marketing. It does take money, and you've got to find. There's lots of great resources out there on how to market a book that's without breaking the bank. And it's also a good idea to maybe fork over a little cash for a course on how to be a drug kingpin or a jewel thief, because that way you'll always have plenty of money to pay for all the other items I just mentioned, the editing and the design and the proofreading. So if you can become a drug kingpin, a jewel thief, maybe a hitman, and get away with it, then you're going to be, those are great day jobs for writers.
And you'll have stuff to write about.
Yeah, and if you get caught, you go to prison, and then you'll meet all sorts of cool characters in prison that will inform your writing and give you great ideas for stories. And then, of course, bourbon and vodka, but not together. Not mixed.
Okay,
that's not healthy. Bourbon and vodka is not a good drink. Okay. Bourbon or vodka, just never quit. Never quit because you can't. Because if you can, then you never were really a writer to begin with. It's if you're a writer, whether you're writing or not currently, you will. If you really are a writer, you have to write. You're going to write. It's going to eat at your soul. So just never quit. And the good news is you can't.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Although
thank you.
Maybe not thank you so much
babble on for another 5 minutes.
The bourbon and vodka tip, but thank you for everything else.
I'm not going to judge. If you want a big bourbon and vodka, who am I, a guy who writes about child sex trafficking and tries to add in humor? Who am I to tell anybody anything? Really?
Very good.
Why did you even want to interview me? What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? That's
it's true. It's true. I should probably seek therapy now.
But I thought it a lot of fun. Hopefully you did. Hopefully the listeners are plural. I'm sure. I hope you have a nice crowd.
I have at least two, yeah.
Enjoy yourself. Great. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I do want to thank you. I've had a lot of fun, and hopefully you have too. And good luck with everything going forward with your next book.
Thank you so much. I've been joking around a lot. In all sincerity, thank you. It's wonderful to, thank you for the extra exposure and taking the time to talk to a wacky writer. And good luck with I'll pass the word on about your podcast too.
Oh, thank you.
And get you've certainly helped me get the word out about my stuff. So I got to return the favor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you once again to my guest this episode, author Greg Levin. We talked about his book In Wolf's Clothing, and don't forget that through January 31st, so that's Wednesday, you can get his book, and 100% of the profits will go to Operation Underground Railroad. That link is in the show description. I'll also include some more information on that for the accompanying blog post for this episode. As a reminder, you can find the book review blog at www.gsmcbookreview.blogspot.com. Thank you so much to Greg. Again, thank you to you, my listeners, for joining me for this interview. I hope you will join me again next time when we will have a bit of a different interview. I don't often do nonfiction on the podcast, but I was contacted by someone who had written a book about women's MMA in Britain. And you may or may not know that I co-host the Women's MMA podcast with Tate. And so we decided that we would put that
interview on both the Book Review podcast and the Women's MMA podcast. So on Thursday's episode, I will be talking with Alistair Hendry about his book, Fight Game, The Untold Story of Women's MMA in Britain. And he is really interesting, and he was really fun to talk to and interview. So it might not be your cup of tea, but it just might be. You maybe have been waiting. Why will she not do a book review and author interview about women's MMA? So this is your lucky week. Again, that it will be on, I think I said Thursday, but that will be Wednesday's episode when I speak with Alistair Hendry about his book, Fight Game. Thank you again for joining me. As always, you can find all of our podcasts at www.gsmcpodcast.com. You can download those podcasts on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, any app that you use for your mobile device. And you can follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. Thank you again, and join me again next time for my author interview with Alistair Hendry. In the meantime, please go out and get yourself lost in a really good book. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.